This conference will now be recorded.
We're right on schedule, so I'm going to call this meeting to order. It's 1 o'clock. I see we do have a quorum. Is there anybody from the public wishing to speak?
I have received no requests, Chairman Houston.
Okay, great. Let's see, any presentations? I don't believe we have any.
There are none.
Okay, no action calendar, so we'll move forward to the information calendar, 6A.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman Houston. Good afternoon, everybody, members of the committee, board, and the public staff. We have two information calendar items today. The first is our standard ledge update report for December 2020. It has been quiet on all fronts in the past, well, most fronts in the past few weeks when it comes to legislation, but EJ Caldwell is here to present to us today on item number 1. EJ?
Yes, thank you very much, Patrick. Chairman Houston, members of the committee and board. As Patrick said, typically December is kind of our slowest month of the year when we talk about legislation, not just on the state side, but also federal. This is being a post-election, it's even more so, I think, this year. And of course, the troubling things that have been happening on our national stage, I think has also slightly impacted our ability to get things done as far as reporting actionable items by Congress. But we did want to present you with the state and federal update today. Some of it you'll notice is a little bit more recent, so the start of January. But I do want to highlight the first report from Pfos and Associates that begins on packet page 5. And first and foremost, as the California State Constitution requires, the governor did produce his 2021 first budget draft. This is all part of that procedural process where the California State Legislature begins to look at a potential budget. Obviously, the May revise is really where we take that deeper look, because you get a clear idea of exactly how much, how far we're tracking as far as revenues go. But I'm very pleased to report, at least according to the governor's proposal, that the economic downturn that we face as and expected here in California has not been as dire as some had expected. And I wanted to highlight that the governor released his $227 billion proposed budget. It's drastically different than last year, as noted by Pfos and Associates. And one of the key pieces of that was, you'll recall that last year, as part of Governor Newsom's budget proposal, included that resiliency bond. And that was kind of the initial stage where water agencies and environmental stakeholders really took attention to the fact that this proposed bond was possibly going to move through the 2020 legislature. Obviously, it did not take place last year. We were semi-hopeful that maybe 2021 would be the time, but of course, the governor has not included that in his budget. He did outline his 4 priorities. First and foremost is education spending to get students back into the classroom. He also provided $1.5 billion to subsidize electric car sales and infrastructure. This is very much in tune with some of his public statements and his executive orders back in 2021. You also see that there's millions of dollars for small business tax credits. And of course, $5 billion in immediate action to partner with the legislature to provide resources to battle the pandemic. And this really is kind of an acknowledgement that right now we're at the very emerging stages of the vaccination process. And I think California has taken more of a progressive approach when we talk about masks and social distancing and kind of the county by county shutdowns once they meet certain criteria for the different stages. But really, people are starting to look at the vaccination process and the rollout of that. And I think that most people are looking at it saying, are we where we want to be? And the quick answer would be not quite yet, but I think people are extremely hopeful that there's a chance to work with the administration that'll obviously enter into our federal government tomorrow, in fact. And of course, the synergy between our state and federal government might be a little bit better than it's been over the past few years. Do want to highlight that within that budget, there are specific funding, $248.6 million for the restoration of natural areas and ecosystems. You can see this at the bottom of packet page 5. Some of the things to really take notice of is the flood management. This is something that our past 3 governors have really hit hard on. This goes all the way back to Governor Schwarzenegger, where there were specific fears about flood management and how to contradict that. And of course, you can go back all the way to New Orleans and look at how the Army Corps of Engineers really planned for future investments in that flood protection infrastructure, and it's continuing to this day. You see coastal protection at $6.5 million. You can turn the page. Sustainable groundwater. This is obviously something that with Sigma has been the talk in California for the past several years. And last but not least, you see that safe and affordable drinking water program. That's the $130 million that was strategically negotiated by the Senate Pro Tem just a few years ago, and you're starting to see the fruit of that. And those funds will be going out and become available to parts of the Central Valley and small water systems that really need the assistance. I'm going to jump to packet page 7 because I'm going to come back and touch a little bit on some of the legislation here in a minute. But I did want to point out that obviously with the selection of California Attorney General Javier Becerra to serve in the U.S. Senate, there is a lot of discussion related to who would be the appointee or the nominee, in fact, for the Attorney General. And we have included several of the potential nominees here. Just like Javier Becerra before that, it's anybody's guess. I know that there's a lot of things that the governor is going to weigh in on, and so we will continue to monitor that. And I wanted to point out the bottom of packet page 7, the Rescue California, the campaign to recall Governor Newsom. And I highlight this because while a lot of people, including myself, have said, the chance of a recall just doesn't seem likely. It's really worth noting that I've talked to several people in the Capitol that feel the same way that they felt back when Gray Davis was recalled, that there was this minor momentum that kind of built and built and built to a point where it was somewhat difficult to stop. And even then, it didn't seem like it had the momentum to really go over the edge until a couple of different, I would say, high-end candidates jumped in the race to say, well, if there is a recall, they would be running. And so you can see kind of the formation of that, the wave is growing a little bit, primarily because of everything that's been going on with the pandemic. Now, things can obviously right their way and they can right the ship as far as vaccination goes, but this is something that we'll want to keep an eye on. Obviously, Governor Newsom has brought a very progressive approach to his time in the administration and has very high goals. You can see that highlighted in his budget. And so obviously a recall at this point would drastically change kind of how we view the administration. If you can turn to packet page 9, this is the start of the West Basin tracking sheet that we do annually. And this obviously will be populated with hundreds of bills prior to the deadline bill introductions. But we wanted to immediately kind of get some of these bills on there. You can see here, employment and telecommuting. That's going to be a new topic of discussion because it's drastically changed the way a lot of businesses conduct business. Back before that, AB 62. Again, income tax credits. This is going to be a big issue, obviously, in the next year and even 2 years as people really start to take account on the tax implications of not just businesses conducting work at their home, but obviously even the individual employees, because at-will employees that typically work in an office, they typically can't write off their business expenses that take place in their home. And that's something that's going to be drastically different, I think, moving forward. Assembly Bill 100 by Assemblymember Holden related to drinking water, pipes and fittings, specifically related to lead content. This is something that's been tracked over the last handful of years especially when you talk about public systems. So I have a feeling that that bill is going to go through a couple of reiterations and a few amendments, but it seems like it's quite possibly going to move forward. I'll jump down to Senate Bill 45 by Portantino. This is the bond that I was referring to that in last year's governor's budget was included. But you see the Wildfire Prevention, Safe Drinking Water, Drought Preparation, and Flood Protection Bond Act of 2022. Again, you're looking at a $5.5 billion bond. As always, within the water industry, we want to see that specific funding for water infrastructure, emerges as a key component of those bonds because they typically get marketed that way. So we want to make sure that we continue to work on that. Senate Bill 46 by Senator Stern, representing the northern portion of the West Basin service area. You see employment, contact tracing, and safety policies. Again, another COVID-19 bill. And last but not least, Senate Bill 52 by Senator Dodd, a state of emergency, local emergency, sudden and severe energy shortages. And this, of course, we saw it a little bit this past summer with some of the brownouts. It does impact ultimately a portion of the West Basin service area, as the AES facility in Redondo Beach was extended for I believe 1 year, but they did anticipate them coming back and looking at it again. Again, it's difficult to shut down power plants when portions of the state have emergency energy issues. Not to say that facility would have impacted or benefited some of the portions of California that were impacted by that. But we want to obviously be tracking this because I expect that bill to be amended and kind of shaped as the legislative session moves on. Moving forward, I was going to jump into our federal update. And obviously, nothing will, divert people's attention away from what is expected to take place tomorrow, the inauguration of the Biden presidency. Today is, in fact, though, a very significant day as all of the newly elected senators are sworn in. That will constitute that 50-50 majority for Democrats in the U.S. Senate, primarily because of Kamala Harris, who presides over the Senate. So there'll be that tiebreaker there. So that will initiate this process. You're also seeing several hearings already on some of the appointees by the Biden administration, including Ali Mayorkas, attorney who's previously done some work for West Basin Municipal Water District. So I don't know if there's much more. I think everybody's kind of tracking what's going on in Washington, D.C. But I did want to highlight one final thing. West Basin and VSA, we've brought to your attention a few times some of the work that we've been doing related to the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, working to get an appropriation within their 2021 work plan for a potential project. As part of that outreach, we've talked with staff members from all of our delegation, all of the members of Congress, to talk a little bit about a potential letter of support for West Basin's Harbor South Bay project. And really, we focused in on two specific pipeline lateral projects in our discussions. One was the Mills Park project that's located in the city of Carson. And then there is another one, the North Gardena lateral. Obviously, this would impact a couple of our congressional districts a little bit more than the others. Those being Representative Barragan, who represents Carson, as well as Representative Maxine Waters, who represents that portion of Gardena. And we've been working with their offices. It does look like Congresswoman Barragan is going to kind of lead an effort to collect and gather those signatures so we can get that letter over to the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. West Basin staff, as well as VSA, have been working diligently with Congresswoman Maxine Waters on their letter. They did have some questions about meeting with the city of Gardena and kind of working with them to make sure that they support the project. That's kind of presented just a small glitch in the process, in the sense that if you can imagine, the city of Gardena does not actually have a water department. They have their public works department and their parks department, but they don't actually serve water or are related to that. So we've been working through that. I know that Maxine Waters' staff has been very gracious and working very closely. I know that President Gloria Gray has had some conversations with Kathleen from their office. So we feel extremely confident that we're going to be able to get this letter done and get it to the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. And it is worth noting that, last year we did receive $1 million from the U.S. Army Corps, so that is in the work plan. We are working with the South Pacific Division of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to assign that $1 million to a project. So we're working with our engineering department there. The fact that that $1 million is still there is kind of intriguing in the sense that we haven't been able to spend it yet because of COVID and working through the amendment to the agreement with the U.S. Army Corps. But again, we're still very hopeful that we could get some money this year. And if not, obviously we're primed to go in future years. So with that, in relation to the state and federal affairs, that's all I have, Chairman Houston, unless you have any questions.
Okay, thank you very much, EJ. I'm going to jump and ask one question before I open it to colleagues. I just want to be clear, is that the letter we were talking about in the last month or two where Congressman Liu usually was leading that charge, and now potentially Nanette Barragan? Is that the same letter we're talking about?
It is, and if you look at just the our strategy in the past, Congressman Liu, obviously through his time in Congress, his congressional district has kind of evolved and actually changed through the redistricting. However, these two projects, the projects that we've been promoting as far as our next two projects, are not in his congressional district. And so, we talked with his staff. They were more than willing to carry the torch, and go get the signatures, but they wanted to defer to the members in which the projects would be in their area. So it's kind of nice because we had potentially 3 champions for the Harbor South Bay project this year. And of course, we've received word from Ted Liu's office that their signature is already available to us to put on the letter. But yes, it would be kind of led by Congresswoman Barragan representing the Carson project, and then of course Maxine Waters representing the North Gardena project.
Okay, and it's still going to be one letter. Is that still what we're trying to accomplish? Is just one letter?
That's the goal. There is a small chance that Congresswoman Waters would do a separate letter again on her own.
Oh, okay, great. Okay, let me go ahead and open it to colleagues. Let's see. Well, Gloria Gray, Director Gray, you're the member. So any questions or comments at this point?
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, EJ, for that very thorough report. I know you already gave us status on it, but do you have any idea when you will have a definite response from Gardena to Congresswoman Waters in terms of their perspective on it, on the project, and when those letters may be forthcoming?
I am waiting for an update. When I spoke with Pete Evich on Friday, it sounded like we had gotten everything done and everything was moving forward. I have to be honest, we're working with, in unprecedented times. I mean, not only with the Capitol situation, but also with the inauguration. And obviously, I know that you've been back in Washington, D.C. During this time. It makes things a little bit more challenging. But again, I want to say thank you and give a lot of credit to Representative Maxine Waters' office, because they've been great to work with and kind of working with us. And I mean that it's not very often that we're getting phone calls from their staff that are, they're completely engaged on this. So I will see if I can get a update from Pete here before this meeting is over. I'll send him a quick update, but my understanding is that it's been done.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I really just want to know if there was any issues with Gardena. That was really the question, and you're right. Maxine's staff did reach out to Kathleen several times and so forth on it. So I just want to make sure that Gardena did not have any issues with it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you, President Gray. Any other questions, comments? Oh,
No,
Director
thank you. Just keep it moving. Thank you.
Okay, great. I do have a couple things really fast, EJ. So one is Portantino is now going to carry this SB 45, or does it maintain the same number, SB 45?
So that's, I don't know if we want to call it luck or if he planned it that way, but yes, so this is a completely new bill introduced back, I believe, in December. And so, yes, it just happens to be the same number. So we got Senate Bill 45 again.
Okay, so, but that's the one that Ben Allen and Henry Stern were championing last year, right?
Correct, but it's worth noting that Portantino did jump on that bill last year as well.
Okay, so now he's the lead now, basically.
Correct.
Okay. Okay. The next thing is, and I noticed, and thank you for the update on the potential recall campaign. Obviously, it's getting a lot of attention. I think I heard is the former mayor of San Diego, Kevin Falconer, looking at potentially running, if that qualifies for governor.
That's my understanding.
Okay, got it. And there probably have a lot of other names, but that's the one that I heard because he's not in office anymore. Let's see, I think I had one other question. I did have a question on, now I've heard from different places that, you know, as they try and get this vaccine out, and they're trying to figure out what are essential workers, are utility organizations, utilities qualifying for that?
Yes, they are, and especially frontline utility workers. But it's worth noting, and I don't have it here in front of me, but specifically water and wastewater employees are actually included as a high priority. Now, they're not the front line as far as medical professionals and I think teachers, and all of a sudden you have seen that change. California State, well, I think the administration has now allowed 65 and older, so they've actually lowered that age. I think it originally started at 75 and over. So yes, utilities are included in that.
Okay,
They're
so
one of the tiers.
Okay, well, what does that mean for West Basin?
I would assume that would mean that at a certain point, West Basin employees would be eligible to make an appointment for a specific vaccine or vaccination.
Okay, great. So are we tracking that? Because I haven't heard anything from West Basin about it, but if the agency is eligible or the plant workers are eligible, how do we know when they can get vaccinated?
So I can check with our HR department, but my understanding is that there are multiple tiers. West Basin has a water, and even possibly you could, because of the recycled water aspect of wastewater agency. We're down there, and I know I've seen it, but I couldn't tell you how far down in the tiers we are. And at a certain point, I would believe that ACWA, JPIA, and other organizations would notify us as far as that goes. But I would defer that to our HR department.
Yeah, EJ, let me respond to that. Yeah, Michelle was looking into that, and so this is moving fairly fast, as you pointed out. And to Director, for our Chairman Houston's request, as it pertains to us as essential service provider, and to our contract operators at the providing on our behalf the same thing, we will we'll get back to you with information on eligibility once Michelle brings that to me in terms of vaccination eligibility. So we'll send that out to the board, Chairman Houston.
Great, that would be really good, because I've heard some other utilities in our area are definitely watching it and looking at it and trying to qualify or what have you. So please, if you guys could let the board know if West Basin is eligible as well, or how quickly. Let's see, I don't think at the moment I had anything else. I do know, obviously, you know, the inauguration's tomorrow, so we have no clue how quickly things are going to move forward in DC. I did see that the Senator Josh Hawley just put a hold on Mayorkas confirmation, so that just happened. So anyway, never a dull day. I guess, is there anything else on this, EJ, before we leave the state stuff? What is the working schedule of the legislature? Because I mean, they already took an extra week off, if you will, before they came back. So what do we anticipate is there, just moving forward with some business?
So I think, again, we're going to have to play things by ear a little bit. I think you're going to see a little bit of a similar situation as we saw last year, which did make things, I think, a little bit more difficult. But if you look at the legislative deadlines, currently they have not moved. January 22nd is the last day to submit bill requests. Obviously, that's the process in which you would introduce legislation. You get that into legislative council so that they can get it back to that member and you can begin to work on it. And then, of course, the last day for bills to be introduced is February 19th. So again, you're looking at a quick turnaround, 1 month from today, really, as far as that deadline. And I would not expect that those deadlines would be extended, because it becomes extremely problematic when you begin to push the front part of the session into the latter part. I think if you look at last year and kind of when the state went into shutdown mode, I think we got kind of lucky that we made it through those first two months and a couple weeks, because it didn't really impact the bill introduction process. But that being said, you are seeing leadership already talk about specific priorities and how specific committees will not be taking up a lot of different issues. You're going to see COVID-19 already in the bills that we've seen, and legislation that specifically relates to our current situation. So I think it's going to be, again, a different type of year than we've had in the past.
Good. Okay, that's all my questions. And I remembered what I was thinking about earlier was I did see that Congresswoman Barragan has obviously been extremely vocal in the hiring situation of a general manager down at WRD. She seems to really be leading that charge pretty heavily. So I just wanted to note that. Okay, so with that, we will move to the next item, 6B as in boy, the Metropolitan Water District report.
Yeah, EJ, take it away.
Yes, thank you again, Patrick, Chairman Houston, members of the committee board. And this is one of those moments where I want to promise you that in the months ahead, we are going to have some very significant issues to discuss. But you can see from the report that we have, especially going over all of our December items. Just last month, we talked a little bit about each of these items. So the Delta Conveyance project, we highlighted that the Metropolitan Water District, their board of directors agreed to fund 47.2% of the planning cost estimates. And the one thing that we noted right after they did this is that this was a unanimous vote by the Metropolitan Water District Board of Directors. It was actually passed on consent. Obviously, there was a great deal of discussion in committee and in the months previous, but really when it came down to the board meeting, the board was in complete agreement, especially as it relates to the 47.2%, because as you might recall, there was a small discussion about funding a little bit more and actually getting into the roughly 62%. And so I think they scaled that back a little bit and are paying what would be called their fair share of the planning costs of the Delta Conveyance project. And then the other item that was approved back in December, we've talked about the regional water recycling program, and this is something that West Basin has really been tracking. The project itself will be here in the city of Carson. So obviously it's a project that we hold it with a lot of value. But the key question was whether Metropolitan Water District wanted to engage with the Southern Nevada Water Authority on a potential agreement where Southern Nevada Water Authority would actually provide Metropolitan Water District with funding for this initial stage and the environmental impact reports to kind of get in on the ground level and study and analyze this project. And the idea behind that is that obviously when we look at where California is as far as water infrastructure, we are miles ahead, I think, of the rest of the United States when it comes to recycled water. And I think that it shouldn't come as a shock. I think that West Basin Municipal Water District deserves a lot of the credit in the sense that we've been really singing the praises of IPR, or indirect potable reuse, as well as direct potable reuse. And these projects that you see kind of regionally, and the Metropolitan Water District project, of course, when they look at that, that's considered to be a potable reuse project, whether you want to look at indirect or direct. The idea is that ultimately this water supply will be utilized for potable usage, and possibly could be the first raw water augmentation project of this scale in the state of California. So the idea behind that is that if Metropolitan Water District were to have that and be able to actually place that in front of a drinking water system, that would provide flexibility and opportunities to trade water with an agency where they could actually leave water out there in the Colorado River and rely on local sources. And this is something that Metropolitan Water District does not get enough credit for, just kind of the strategic planning of water resources and moving water and creating opportunity down the road when they have ample supply at the time. So they're always thinking about strategic water resource opportunities that could provide water in the midst of a drought. So I think that if you listen to Jeff Keitlinger in the discussion here, this was kind of what he would call a zero interest loan, as an opportunity to have them come in and invest, and ultimately Metropolitan Water District could either return the money and in fact work out something down the road. It just provided a lot of flexibility, and it made Southern Nevada Water Authority kind of an opportunity to play in this arena right now at the earliest stages. So when you listen to the presentations provided by Metropolitan Water District staff, and I believe that there are a couple of directors, including directors from the municipal water districts of Orange County, that really talked about financially, this is a win-win situation. So ultimately, they did approve that. So we are very excited to see that happen. And then I think the last item that I really wanted to just point out was that Metropolitan Water District did approve their agreement with the City of Culver City and West Basin Municipal Water District on the stormwater project. You can see that at packet page 21. As you recall, the West Basin Board of Directors approved that agreement as well. We are now waiting for Metropolitan Water District to circulate the agreement. I believe I can check with our administrative offices here, but now all three parties have now approved that. And per the direction of the West Basin Board of Directors, we will be inviting the City of Culver City and their staff, their contractors out to provide briefings on that project as things progress. But we are very excited to see that item move forward. And last but not least, I know you've seen this before, but because it was approved in the December board meeting, I did want to highlight that on packet page 24, we did provide the presentation related to the 2021 legislative priorities and principles. There is really nothing new in here that kind of jumped out at the board of directors. Again, going back to the legislative update, you see a little bit of the statewide initiatives and issues priorities. You see on packet page 27, COVID-19 relief. Support for direct financial relief to low-income households facing utility bill arrearages. This is something that Metropolitan Water District has done, I think, a great job of getting ahead of the curve. And you'll remember that they have actually approved a program to allow its member agencies to defer their payments if, in fact, they're being impacted by non-payment at the retail level. As a wholesaler, West Basin Municipal Water District doesn't really get impacted by this as much, but it's very important that we continue to work with our retailers to make sure that if they are being impacted, that we can provide the same benefits to them at the retail level as we would be afforded at the wholesale level. So in the months ahead, if we find that our retailers are being severely impacted, staff may return to the board of directors to initiate a process where we can kind of take advantage of that program at Metropolitan Water District. Priority number 7, Pfos monitoring and remediation. This is going to be an issue for the Metropolitan Water District service area. You are hearing about it down in Orange County, somewhat significantly. I know down in East Orange County, they are actually going to drastically reduce their groundwater usage. So we'll continue to track that and see how it impacts Metropolitan Water District. And last but not least, I was going to highlight on packet page 29, the updates on legislative principles, the regional water resources management and conservation, support for flexibility, water law standard development and implementation. Again, depending on the part of the Metropolitan Water District service area, you're talking about very aged infrastructure. So making sure that there is flexibility as far as reporting water loss, and finally, consideration of wholesale system constraints. So that would potentially impact West Basin. And I believe that the last item that we have for you is if you turn to packet page 34. You can begin to take a look a little bit at where we are. We are entering an extremely dry winter. I've been told that there's potential storm this week, but you look at the 2020 Colorado River on the left-hand side, you can see that the upper Colorado River basin is at 75%. Down below, you can see Lake Powell, 42, and I believe it's 40% at Meade. That's obviously to be expected. If you look at the far right-hand side, the water supply conditions for the State Water Project, again, snow and precipitation is quite low. You can see all the reservoirs are actually fairly low, but again, that's all planned within the California water system, providing room for runoff when it comes. So Lake Oroville, pretty low. You go down to San Luis Reservoir, 47%, Castaic, semi-high at 77%, and you can see that DVL, which is, providing a blanket of security that people will look at that investment for decades and talk about the fact that DVL is sitting here in January at 87%, which is pretty significant. If you look in the middle, you can see on the bottom left-hand square there, MWD storage and reserve levels. Again, an extremely healthy 3.2 million acre feet in storage at this time. So we are looking, great as far as that goes, able to withstand quite a bit of lack of precipitation. So we'll continue to track that. And then the last slide just has, I think, some additional data there for you. This is within the Met monthly update, and you can see that in the upper left-hand corner, the start to the Northern Sierra snowpack, we're tracking below normal. Not to say that we couldn't catch up if needed, but we're hoping, especially if you're a skier or a snowboarder, hopefully the months of February and March will be able to provide a little bit more. And that's really all I have, Chairman Houston, unless you have any specific questions.
Okay, thank you. I caught that, EJ, that your lights went out.
Yes.
You're waving so you can get that motion sensor. Yeah, please pay the bills. Okay, you know what? I do have a couple of comments or questions, but let me ask the committee first. Director President Gray, do you have any questions or comments for EJ?
No, I don't. Thank you very much.
Okay. Any other board member?
Nope.
Okay. Let's see. I had, the question was, now on the Culver City project, and I did see it got approved through Met, which is awesome. And maybe it's just a technical thing I don't understand, but I think our board members abstained from the vote or didn't vote for it or what, but can you explain how that works just for my edification?
Yes, and of course, I'll defer to our Met directors as well, but I believe that MWD's legal counsel has advised when you potentially a beneficiary or a recipient of those funds, there could be a conflict of interest. In this sense, because Culver City is actually the project proponent, I believe that they merely abstained or did not vote on the specific item. In certain cases, if there's a potential conflict, you'll notice that the MWD directors will actually exit the meeting or leave the meeting at that time. But because there's really no conflict here, they simply did not vote.
Okay, good. I figured it was something like that. I just want to be clear, especially for others.
Yeah.
Yes, President Grant?
Yeah, I was just going to say, EJ is absolutely right. We were advised, and that was the reason why the vote was what it was. Thank you.
Okay, excellent. And then on the same lines, I was going to ask staff, do we have any other projects in our service area that may be eligible at some point for this program coming up down the road?
So it's worth noting that this is a pilot program. So it was initiated with specific funding available to it. What they sought to do, and you may or may not recall, what they were hoping to do is actually look at stormwater for direct use in all of the different climate zones within the Metropolitan Water District service area. So you're looking at coastal, you're looking at inland, you're looking at Southern California. So they're looking at all these different areas. And so they actually only provided so much funding per project. So unless they were to extend it or add additional funding, there would not be an opportunity. But it's worth pointing out that, of course, when this pilot program was initiated, West Basin staff reached out to a handful of our cities, municipalities, to see if they were interested in providing or submitting a project. It just so happened that Culver City was ready to go. And I think I've pointed this out in the past. We were actually fairly lucky in the sense that West Basin staff serves on the Watershed area steering committees, a Measure W process. And in doing that, we actually get to see the majority of the projects, the stormwater projects that are being considered within our area. So you have basically the South Santa Monica Bay and, of course, the Central Santa Monica Bay. And that was really how we identified this project. And we pointed out that this there was an opportunity here if, of course, the city wanted to go through the process. I mean, there's a lot of work to be included as far as monitoring the stormwater usage, capture, and offset as far as the potable demand. So there was a lot of work for the city of Culver City to consider there, and we were lucky enough that they were willing to do it, and we got the project in.
Okay, so how long does the pilot project timeline last?
So my understanding, and I have to go back and take another look at the contract, but I believe that the city of Culver City has a few years in order to recoup all of their costs. So what they would do is they would continue to do the work. They would be invoicing or they would receive the invoices from their contractors, and then they would be passing the invoices through West Basin to Metropolitan Water District. So this isn't what I would call free money. It is offsetting dollars. So they need to spend the money first before they can get reimbursed. So it's very similar to some of our grant projects where we have to commit to doing the construction before we can get reimbursed through the grant.
Oh, great. No, I understand that. But I mean, how long is the pilot project program from MET available for other agencies or organizations to apply to it?
Well, I guess maybe I gave false hope there. I believe that when you look at the coastal area, I believe that they've already awarded the 2 projects that they were going to award for our area.
Okay.
So
got it. Okay. Well, good. And one of the things I know we talked about it is as the project comes together, of course, working with the city of Culver City and West Basin and how we can all talk about that, and the city of Beverly Hills too, because now they're a partner in this. But maybe that's something as well with the Measure W committee at some point when they get updates in the next many months or year, what have you, that hopefully maybe West Basin would have a chance to make a presentation or something to that committee, just so they know that here's what had transpired, what it entailed. Again, just really showcases the work of the regional water district, the local governments, and obviously the county, even just how we're all partnering up here, making great projects come to fruition. So just an idea or a thought. I assume down the road that Measure W, a lot of those projects are getting approved now in the first sort of round or what have you. But at some point they'll get updates through their committees on how progress is going, I assume. So whomever is leading those efforts, whether it's the contractor or if it's the lead agency, it'd be really nice if, you know, in this particular case, West Basin got invited to also participate, just to at least say a few words, to be present. I think that would just be really excellent, you know, especially on the west side and South Bay, both, for them to understand how this process works and what we're doing to be a part of it. And I know you're on one of those committees, EJ, so I mean, you're right there, but I just think it would be a great option for us in a formal way.
Yeah, and you know, it's worth noting that they are actually as part of that committee, and I can bring back a more thorough update. All of the different watershed area steering committees have gone through an interview process where they contemplated what they'd call a watershed outreach coordinator. Mm-hmm. And I know that I don't know if Craig is on the call, but it's been a pretty extensive process as far as the interviewing, trying to find the best outreach coordinators, because they're ultimately, that's what their hope is to do, is kind of educate people on how to understand Measure W and how to get in the queue and get your projects basically included in the plan for possible funding. So there's going to be a considerable outreach component to Measure W in the future.
Okay, very good. Any other questions or comments from the committee or the board members? I don't hear any. One last thing, EJ, that I recall, and it was more from item A, but I also had heard recently there was some thoughts on the future of holding our public meetings after the pandemic is over, you know, looking at the Brown Act from the state level. So I know there's been some discussion of that. I don't know which organizations are leading it. I think that's really relevant. So I would really ask staff to please keep us posted on that. Quite honestly, that might be a very good thing going forward, that agencies do not always have to physically be in their space to hold their meetings, and or we don't have to post it the way we used to post it for someone to be off site, and or we can do these hybrid meetings. That would probably be ideal. So do you know anything about that right now, EJ?
No, but I know that everybody was quite in a scramble back in 2020. You can even imagine the California State Legislature. They had lengthy discussions about how they were going to go about holding their specific meetings, what would constitute a public meeting. You may or may not recall, you know, some of the people that were calling into those meetings, you know, lack of politeness and process was an issue. And so they looked at actually allowing for requiring people to go to an offsite location to register their testimony. So the issues that we face at the local level, you know, they're facing at the state. And so I think that there's a lot of people having this discussion now. I will continue to track it through our different stakeholder groups, including the Association of California Water Agencies, as well as the California Special Districts Association, because I'm sure they're very much involved in this. But providing flexibility when flexibility is needed, I think, is a good thing. And I will let you know as soon as I hear of potential legislation related to that.
Okay, good. Yeah, I think that'd be really, I don't remember where I heard it most recently, but we would have never thought about doing something like that maybe a year and a half ago. But now that we are doing everything virtually, and I mean, obviously the private sector's adapted to this quite well, but the public sector, I think it just gives people a lot more of an opportunity to participate and engage, especially in meetings that are held during the daytime, that they may or may not be able to physically drive to. And or sometimes these meetings, you know, sometimes they're very long and sometimes they're very short. So anyway, I know I've heard the discussion starting to bubble up. I don't know if it's through the special districts or through different other agencies. I have no idea if cities or city councils will consider it, but number one, just keep us posted on that. I just hear it's going to be moving through the legislature, it seems like. And number two, that might be something that we would want to understand and maybe take a position on. As far as I'm concerned, I've been very anxious to get back into the office, as you all know, but at the same time, this has worked quite well. And to drive 30 or 40 minutes to be in a meeting for an hour or two and then drive back or what have you, and especially if you have to drive to downtown, in some ways this may actually be a nice solution. And I also know that there'd be a lot of issues for the elected officials, of course. And then what you mentioned, EJ, and that's true, is the public participation. One of the things I saw really quick, you guys, was before, when people could sort of still go into physical spaces, even here in El Segundo, to do public comment, they would allow the public members to come in and speak at a monitor in the council chamber, even though the council members were all at home. So that was quite unique. Now, of course, I don't think they let them do that anymore, but I just think we've got a whole new way of looking at things, and it's called adaptability. So let's just maintain a part of that conversation. Really thank you for that. Okay, so I don't hear any last call for questions or comments, board members?
No.
Okay, great. Well, this has been very informational, EJ, so thank you very much. And thanks to our lobbying folks in both Sacramento and DC, with many moving parts. And so we'll move on to the next item, is 7, which is closed session.
We have no closed session today, Chairman.
Okay, excellent. And now director comments. Are there any comments or future agenda items from the board members?
Director Houston, just my comments, thanking staff again for the reports. I think EJ was the only one that reported today, but thank you to the GM and staff, all the staff. Thank you very much.
Okay, great.
I'd like to say, Director Houston, if
Yes,
I
sir.
could, I received a call from one of the directors from WRD. You folks may have already talked about this early at the beginning of the meeting, but I had to step out for a minute and at the beginning of the meeting, so I could have missed it. But about a move of conversation about WRD, Central Basin, and West Basin being combined again, like we were back in the 90s. Have you heard anything about that?
Well, let me chime in. Director Williams, you didn't miss anything because we did not talk about any of that.
Okay.
But I would ask staff to answer Director Williams' question, because I have not heard any of this.
Yes, obviously, just in 2020, the issue related to Central Basin Municipal Water District and possibly be placed under a receivership, whereas the Water Replenishment District would be the receiver. We tracked that legislation very closely, had several discussions with some of the assembly staff members that were working on the issue, specifically Alf Brandt, and then a couple of different stakeholders. We've continued to track that. It doesn't, from our perspective, it doesn't seem like there's much interest in reintroducing that. I don't know if that's partially due to recent activity or other issues, but we're going to continue to track it. I have asked EML, Pfos and Associates to keep an eye out, keep their ears open to see if there's potential legislation. And to date, we have not heard or seen anything. So if this is being discussed, we have not been a part of it and are not aware of it.
Well, this is in light of the fact that WRD's issue with getting a general manager, that this came to light, that because they were having such a terrible time, that the legislators were looking at perhaps combining the water districts into one body, as back in the 90s. So not just the issue with Central Basin and WRD, but with WRD having to have legislators send letters to them, chastising them for their management style or their governance.
Yeah, I can also, maybe this is an issue that we can defer to Steve O'Neill for kind of his perspective. You know, when I look at it and taking off the legislative hat, I look at the legality of it. And there were concerns that I addressed with Assembly staff last year related to Central Basin and the Water Replenishment District. You know, all three agencies were created by a vote of the public. Two of the three are actually formulated under the Municipal Water District Act. So there's a specific charge there. One of them is created under the Water Replenishment District Act. So they have a very specific charge. And it could be construed to have conflicts between the multiple different agencies. You know, I do recall, you know, in years past, I was part of the West and Central Basin staff where we were jointly operated. You know, they had two unique and specific boards that decided on that, probably because of their formation and the way they were created. Staff was managed in a way that where we were able to get the work done. So I don't think it's as easy as some people think it could be to merge the three agencies, I think from a legal perspective. Not to say that it couldn't happen, but maybe I could have a discussion with Steve O'Neill to kind of have him look at it as far as the potential issues. And I can again have a conversation with NPA to say, you know, maybe put out some feelers and see if there's a discussion of this. But to date, I have not heard or seen anything about that subject or the idea.
Okay, well, just keep your ears to the ground and let us know.
Will do.
Okay. Thank you, Director Williams. Is that President Gray?
Yes, I just wanted to kind of add to the discussion.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, and I don't know if we talked about this, but you know, I'm aware that I believe there's a study that UCLA is doing to look at water rates in the South Bay or Southwest or whatever area, which includes our area, and I believe that the results of their study will be coming out in the next couple of weeks. I did have a conversation with Al Brandt about it, and I believe that's what he said, that the results of it will come out, and it may be part of this whole discussion. I don't know if EJ had reported on that, I can't remember, but I just wanted to let the board deal with that study, which I think may have a direct impact on whatever may come out of it in terms of any potential legislation moving forward. And I do believe that this members of the state legislature may be looking at having a public meeting to hear those results and let the public become part of that discussion too. I want to add that to the conversation.
Okay, thank you. Well, like I say, it's the first I heard about it, but it's kind of interesting. So obviously Director Williams, but what were they saying, or maybe President Gray, that they were saying to combine the three different water districts? You know, I just want to understand that I'm hearing that accurate.
Yeah, this is President Gray again. That was not part of the discussion I had. It was the study that I understand UCLA is doing has to do with rate structure, but it will look at governance. So that could be part of it. But again, there was no direct discussion that I had that talked about combining the three. But when you look at governance, and they're looking at, I would assume they would be looking at the agencies within that service area. And I think they are focusing on the retail agencies, but they're going to be looking at governance. And so that could include any discussion of modifying or changing or whatever, any structure that exists right now.
Okay, and then there's going to be potentially a public hearing or meeting from
I
state
believe
level.
so. Again, this is just a conversation. It's not anything that's definite that was part of my discussion, that there may be, and I'm not sure. But I think the key thing is that there is a study that UCLA is doing that will be looking at affordability, this particular part of the county, and it includes our service area, and they also will be looking at governance. And I assume that the study will be making some recommendation based on what the task was, and that those recommendations or the results will be coming out in a few weeks. And how that is handled in terms of the public involvement, I am not sure of that.
Okay. I don't know, Patrick, do you have anything to add to this? It's kind of a surprise.
No, yeah, there's been some rumors out there about this study. Nobody seems to understand the UCLA study that President Gray's talking about. But I believe it was about Southeast Water District governments, Southeast LA County Water District governments. And it was supposed to be more about rates, but then other people say it's going to be about governance. So we're all awaiting the study. I don't know. I have no information on who commissioned it or who is actually what the nascence of this study was, but there are supposed to be some workshops if and when it comes out here soon to discuss the results. That's as much as I know about it. We can look into it a little bit more. We certainly here at West Basin, nobody's ever approached me, or I don't think any of my staff to participate in this study.
I think we should just like keep our ears to the ground, because I did, it was brought to my attention by a director from WRD. So there's something's out there.
Wow. Director Williams, was the director from WRD concerned about it, or was it just sort of informational? What was
More, well, it was kind of a FYI for now,
okay.
but you know, it doesn't take long
Oh yeah,
things to grow.
sure. No. And obviously we saw what was happening last year with Central Basin and WRD and where that could have gone. And I don't know how anybody could really do much of consolidating retailers or what have you, but on the wholesale side, that seems like that would be something that the state could try to exert some authority. So I guess since this is all just coming to our attention, Patrick, obviously you need to talk to our folks in Sacramento and see what we can find out, let alone any of our local lawmakers if they've heard such things, because you know, we don't want to be caught flat-footed. I'd love to hear who's doing the study or why it's commissioned, what it's about. So any information, I guess, Pat, you can get for us and send to the board, that would be really, really good.
Yeah, I'll see what I can find out.
Yeah, because obviously the other thing is if they don't have as much to work on this year up there in Sacramento because of the pandemic, I mean, these might be the things that they focus on. So anyways, if you guys would please do that, that would be great.
All right, thank you.
Oh, great, thank you. Thank you, Director Williams, for bringing that up. Any other comments, questions? Is that it? I think that I didn't hear anybody else. I don't want to cut you off. Okay, so looks like we are right just a hair over an hour. So I want to say thank you to staff. Thank you to my colleagues on the board. It's been a very good meeting. We're ready to get the year moving, and you know, wishing everybody the best. Happy New Year, and hopefully a very happy and safe inaugural day tomorrow in Washington and in all of our capitals. And so with that, this meeting's adjourned.